Which one is this? Here we go. Put that on there. That's the intro. Hello and welcome to... Oh. Hello and welcome to day 5 of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar for 2024. We're here to do a sequel to a video from last year where Dan and I reviewed Breaking Bad. But this time we're going to do its prequel, Better Call Saul, and this time we also have Anthony, and we all live in the same house.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep. And also James might pop in if he wants to, I don't know. He also lives here as well. But yeah, we're here to review Better Call Saul. And before we get into that show, we have to do something that Dan and I said we would do last year that we haven't talked about yet.
I would have a clue what that was.
El Camino, Daniel. We haven't talked about El Camino.
Oh.
Yeah. We don't I won't spend too long in it, but I just want to I would just say that I think it does a lot of great things. I think it's a great epilogue for Jesse Pinkman. My only issue with the film is some of the continuity, like how Todd gains a lot of weight despite it being before the end of the show. It looks really weird. And then also the other thing is like the prosthetics on Walter White in that cafe scene do look a bit strange because he wears like a bald cap.
And Jesse's voice was noticeably deeper.
Yeah, that's the same in Better Call Saul as well. Yeah, and some of the actors have aged a lot. But for the most part, it's a really great, I think it's great. And I especially love the ending where he sees, the ghost of Jane. I think that's, just a perfect way to end it. And also the fact that he gets to start a new life in Alaska away from it all. And he finally escapes all that shit he went through.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it can't be perfect since it's made so many years later. So, yeah, I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think the intentions were there. The intentions were right with it.
Yep.
Yeah, Anthony, from what you remember, what do you think of El Camino?
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments about the continuity with actors. It put me off a little bit, but I think just the writing of these shows and mini movie-esque thing is very, very decent. It is a bit of a spoiler for my later thoughts, but yes, it's noticeable with El Camino, but the story is set well enough that by the end of it, I was still pretty pleased. And kind of
I think the way they brought back that guy who works in that shop, who gives them the new identity, was just so good. Yeah. That actor who plays that, I mean, I think he's dead now, but that one little character that appears a couple of times in Breaking Bad and El Camino, he's just so, there's something about those scenes that are very memorable. Yeah, the vacuum cleaner guy.
Yeah.
I love everything to do with that subplot in Breaking Bad and El Camino.
Such an interesting idea. It's like a last resort. You're playing your final card.
Yeah, and also the fact that the characters are shitting themselves as to whether to do it or not.
And it costs lots of money.
And also the look on his face when he realizes that the same guy wants to do it twice. He's like, huh? But yeah.
How long ago did we watch that? Or did I watch it?
Oh, we watched El Camino probably close to a year ago. Maybe January.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All three of us.
Yeah, we all watched it.
Yeah, I watched.
Because Anthony started watching Breaking Bad with us when we moved to this house, so it would have been season 4.
Ah.
Yep.
Wow, I thought we finished Breaking Bad at John Roma.
No, we finished it here.
It was here, I remember. I remember seeing the ending and being like, I get it.
Yeah, although Anthony hasn't seen season 3 of Breaking Bad, at some point you need to watch that because there's some good shit in there,
Yeah.
especially with Hank.
Yeah, there's
Holy,
been,
Yes.
yeah, I've heard like story beats that I haven't seen that sound insane.
yeah,
And different
Gus and
characters
Hank,
that do stuff where
and
I'm
also
like, oh, that sounds...
the episode Fly, I believe, is in season 3. That's like a masterpiece.
Yeah. That's
The
when you guys
lowest
would
rated episode.
It's great. It's so
Connor
good.
would love it.
It's such a good episode.
Oh, so good. They're all stuck in the room the whole time.
Yeah, it's the absolute epitome of Walter being pedantic.
Yeah, Better Call Saul didn't have enough Walter.
It had some, but yeah, Better Call Saul is the prequel. It's actually longer than the show it's based on, which is interesting. So unlike Breaking Bad, I've decided we won't end up doing a season ranking for this one, and the reason why is I think it's impossible, because I feel like with Better Call Saul, it's so consistent that it's like splitting hairs.
Yeah. Correct. It's all good.
Because like all of the creases in Vince Gilligan's show running, like obviously Breaking Bad is like 90 to 95% like perfect in almost like that capacity, but there are creases in his storytelling from Breaking Bad, not to discredit the highs, but there are a few little lows. But I feel like in Better Call Saul he irons them out, and that whole show is just consistent start to end. Like there's every episode is of a really good quality. All the characters are interesting. All the storylines are so interesting. It all comes together perfectly. I think, just for me, like, I think Better Call Saul might be the most consistent, long-running show I've ever seen.
Yeah, when I think about it, it's definitely right up there for me in terms of consistency.
Yeah, and also I think
you could sit down and watch any episode and just love it.
Yeah, and also I think in terms of characters, it does more. Like there's more depth to all the main characters in Better Call Saul as well. Like all the Breaking Bad has a lot of great characters, but I feel like some of them aren't as developed as others. Like I feel like characters like Walt Jr. and some of some of like the really minor side characters, like they are good characters, but they're not on the same level as like the main characters. Whereas I feel like in Better Call Saul, even like the tiny characters, like all the the Mesa Verde people and like the Kettlemans and all the lawyers and all of those all the cartel dealers and everyone involved is so just rich in personality, and there's more characters as well. I feel like there's way more characters in Better Call Saul than there was in Breaking Bad, and it's not just focused around like Walter White and Jesse Pinkman's sort of that center of things. There's also like the Mike side plot, there's the Gus side of it, there's Lalo, there's Hector, there's Nacho. There's so much to this show.
Yeah, I mean, going over the recap we just watched, there's so many different characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like every... yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Well, like, as we watch the seasons, like a season would finish, and I'd be like, I'd look at you guys like, damn, that was really good. I don't know how they can top.
I remember when Anthony,
was like, oh shit, okay, they topped that, they managed, and like you were saying, it's the quality is like really good and really consistent.
Do you remember, Anthony, when we got to the end of, I think it was season 2, you thought, or season 3, you thought it was the end of the show, and then we're like, no, we're barely even scratching it.
Yeah. And I was happy too to hear that. I was like, "Oh, sweet! Like I'm invested in this now."
But that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? Is that you were already satisfied with the show when you hadn't even finished it, and then you got more, and like by the end of season 6, like it was fucking devastating because to like realize that we had none left.
And I don't know if you've mentioned this, but when we were all watching it together, I was watching it for the second time, when you guys were watching for the first time.
Yeah, you got to see the rewatchability value of it.
Oh yeah, and just knowing what was coming and seeing your guys' live reaction was just, it's something that's so rare. You know, seeing someone's live reaction to golden television, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and something where like it's not a show with rare moments of reactability. It's like almost every episode you want to see what someone thinks of it. Like it's so just loaded with character moments.
Oh yeah.
And we had nights where we just wanted to do just one more episode, just one more episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
wanted to keep seeing what was going to happen.
Yeah, it's such a good show. So let's dive into some characters then. Obviously, we got to start with the main guy, Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman, Gene Hackinen, whatever you want to call him. Hakovic, whatever it's called. I think Hackinen's a different Gene. Gene Hakovic. I'll let Anthony start with this one.
Yeah, I starting like the first episode where it's him doing a shitty little like ruse. I kind of knew what the show was, and I knew it was a prequel to Breaking Bad, and I knew it was like his lawyer type beat, you know. So when it's him doing little ruses like that, I was like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see where this is going. But the show itself and the evolution of Jimmy McGill to Saul Goodman to Gene Takovich, it's done so well that it, like you were saying, it's by the end of it, it's so satisfying. And even though it's not a like pleasant end for him, you're just like, yeah, that it's you know, it's such a nice kind of fitting ending that you're like, yeah, how did I not realize this is where it was going?
Let's also not forget the last 3 or 4 episodes of this show happen after Breaking Bad or during it.
Yeah. So because we were kind of fresh off of Breaking Bad, and of course this show took us a bit longer to watch and kind of finish. Obviously, it's a longer series, but kind of when it rounds back, and they talk about Walter White being dead. In my mind, I kind of went, "Oh shit, yeah, that's right. He died in right at the end of Breaking Bad, and the police came and found the body and all that." So it's as well. It's like a nice little kind of epilogue for Breaking Bad and that series. And of course, you see characters return. Hank obviously returns earlier than the last episode. You see kind of the, I guess, victims of um, of Saul or of Jimmy and Walter and all of that. So it does. It's really. It was nice to see the conclusion, I guess, to that universe, so to speak, or maybe not. I hear they're doing another show within there.
Oh, it's the show that he's doing is not in the same universe. This is pretty much closed off.
That was it. Okay, so well, yeah. What I was saying previously, it was a nice kind of send off for this universe, I suppose. But the evolution of Jimmy McGill is done really well, so well, in fact, that it's almost like you've been conned by Saul Goodman himself. By
You know-
the end, you're like, oh yeah, of course, he ends up in prison. Of course.
He's like, I think we've I think what I've learned through both Walter White and especially Saul Goodman is the cruel art of gaslighting, because it goes to like Titanic levels in both of these shows, and how much these like the lies like hurt everyone around them and even kill people.
Yeah. As well, I was thinking about this earlier. How okay, Breaking Bad more so than Saul Goodman, but it's kind of centered around like the drug trade. Um, Saul Goodman's more like the aftermath of that, and like the outer kind of wheel of how like drug dealers do shit and people get hurt and blah blah blah. But the like Better Call Saul is like the aftermath and like what the lawyers do and what the people who are affected by all of that do kind of so it kind of fits the outer circle of the characters of Breaking Bad, and that's I think how it ties up this universe so nicely.
Yeah. Dan, your thoughts on Jimmy slash Saul slash Gene?
Well, yeah, just while Anthony was speaking, I was just kind of thinking about what I would say here. You know, thinking deeply, something I don't do very often. So, you know, I think the best part about the show is that in Breaking Bad, we sort of just saw the side of, well, we saw Saul Goodman, who was like the dodgy criminal lawyer, but then in Better Call Saul, we found out like how he became that person just from growing up as a child, and how he was sort of doing all those cons to make money and survive and stuff, and just yeah, I found it really interesting how deep they dived into his story, and I loved how his little catchphrases like "get it down to brass tacks" and I
Yep.
just I find really memorable. That when I think about all the TV shows I watch, I don't really find too many characters memorable there in my everyday life. I'm like, I think about his little catchphrases, and like Saul Goodman, he does the little finger point stuff, and he was just such a memorable
All
character.
those stupid the disposable phones always got me.
That was the ultimate scam. I mean, there was plenty of them in there, but just I loved the lengths that he went to
Yeah.
to do stuff.
The levels he would go to like scheme and troll people was so satisfying.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I just loved it, and he's a huge part of what makes the show what it is, obviously. But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Like it's things like how he was how he was piecing those like shredded documents back together, or when he went to the bloody photocopying shop, or when he had all those cell phones to make that lawyer call up all those people.
Yeah, having what 30 cell phones ready, each one with a different identity. That is just brilliant. And the part where he changed the address on Chuck's
Oh my god.
thing, after watching the recap, I was thinking that was probably in my top 3 events of the show. That whole spiel where
Yeah.
he just put absolutely everything. He thought of every little piece of thing that he needed to do just to get at his brother.
Well, I think that one of the most iconic events in the show is when he gets Huel to sneak the electric phone into Chuck's pocket, which sets him off in the courtroom. It's so like nasty, but also deserved as well.
Yeah, he's stubborn and he wants his revenge.
But also it comes back to bite him in the end, because at the end of season 6, Kim fucks him over by confessing about what happened to Howard. And then because of how he feels about Kim and because he doesn't want her to face civil charges, he confesses to all his crimes under oath, which then puts him in jail for life.
And it's not because he changed, it's because of Kim. That's my favorite part. He will never change, but his love for Kim was just too strong.
Yeah, he can't fathom the idea that something he did, like something that was his fault, leads to her life, suffering. And so he has to take the bullet for it. And it's a really warped and fucked up way of loving someone, but it's genuinely how Jimmy is. It's the person he is.
Yeah, I think it was a fitting ending.
And given also like how much his brother abused him as well, like he's a very self-deprecating person in that way. But also, yeah, I mean, I think also let's not forget how amazing Bob Odenkirk was in this role as an actor. He nailed it, absolutely nailed it every time.
Yeah, for sure.
I assume he got nominated for something for it.
He got nominated for Emmys, but he never won one, and he should have.
Really? Wow, that's
I think
insane.
it's criminal that I think it was in 2019, the last season of Game of Thrones won an Emmy, but Better Call Saul didn't.
Wow. After all the backlash.
Yeah, that is so like I remember even online that being controversial at the time because Better Call Saul in 2019, like people were like, yeah, this is the best show on TV, and Game of Thrones season 8 was like a universally disliked season.
Yeah,
And yet they won the Emmy because they had, the big budget and everything, like all the dragons and brah.
Yep.
But it's when you actually like get past the technical achievement and just focus on like the storytelling.
When you
I
get
feel
down to
like
brass
when you
tacks.
get down to brass tacks, the fact that over all those years of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, that this guy never won an Emmy for that character is a crying shame.
That is a shame.
Also, the other thing I love about Jimmy is the way he interacts with all these other characters. So whether that be when he's doing elder law with all the old women and everything, which is absolutely hilarious. He's got that little bingo game he does.
God.
That was so funny. Then you've got how absolutely shit scared he is whenever he's with Mike or with any of the cartel. And like when they were out in the desert and he thought he was gonna die.
Drank his own piss.
Jesus Christ. Or
I really liked how as soon as the cartel were like introduced and involved, like you're saying, you see a different side of Jimmy. But it for me, I several times I'd be like, shit, this is still the same show. Like nothing's changed. And then eventually, when it comes back to like the lawyer side of the show, it does it so nicely.
Yeah, and then like whenever he's in the courtroom, or if he's on like an advertisement, or if he's doing like lawyer service, he puts on the character.
Yep.
Then obviously there's him with Kim. Obviously him and Kim go on those little adventures where they fuck with people, like they just mess around with them and pretend to be imposters. Then you've got all the tension with him and Chuck. You got all the tension with him and Howard as well. You've got when he there was another one as well. I'm forgetting it now. Shit, I've lost it. Yes, yeah, I mentioned him and Mike. There was something else. I can't remember what it was. But oh yeah, no, I remember now. So it was when his friend died. Do you remember that early in the show? They went into the past and he had that old friend.
Oh, the guy he did pranks with.
Yeah. There was that too. And then obviously another thing I love about the show is that when we are in a point in time that is not the present, they change the lighting to let you know what's going on. So if it's a scene in the past, it's dark blue, usually. If it's a scene in like the near future, it's orange, like it's foreshadowing. And then if it's in the far future, it's black and white, so like at the end of the show.
Don't know if I noticed the first two.
Yeah,
You
well,
might have pointed that out.
it's not in every scene, but like there's, all the scenes with, there was like that dinner that Jimmy had with Chuck and his, partner at the time, who is
Oh, yeah, actually, maybe I did.
and like the lighting's like really dark and blue.
And like the one with Kim as a child.
Yes, yeah. But also I think as much as it's not a dominating part of the show, I genuinely think one of my absolute favorite storylines is the black and white scenes with Gene Takovic in the cinnamon bun bloody shop in the future. I think that whole storyline throughout the show with him is like perfect. And one of my favorite episodes is when he messes with the mall cop guy, like by giving him the cinnamon buns, and he doesn't look at the cameras while he's stealing the clothes. I think that is one of my favorite episodes. That was so genius.
Wow, you know what? I actually found that like those future scenes the least enjoyable of the whole show.
Really?
Quite interesting how we are opposites on that.
I actually at the start, like when we knew it was future but didn't know what was happening, I was just like, whatever. As it went on, I became more and more invested because obviously we spent more time with, we'll call it present day Jimmy, or future Jimmy.
Are you saying that, Daniel, because he gets in trouble with Small Chips Lady?
What was that?
Well, Small Chips Lady reports him to the police, and that's how he gets arrested at the end.
Oh no. I I think like the season 6 black and white stuff was the best of the black and white stuff.
Yeah, it's fully developed.
The ones at the start of each season, I just, especially the first time I watched it, I don't know if it's just because I'm just simple and I just like having it, fed to me. But having to watch that and then I don't know, I feel like I just wanted to see the show as it was and then worry about the future later or something like that.
Okay. So, because one of my favorite versions of that was the scene where he gets locked in the rubbish bin room, which I think might be season 3. I can't remember. It's somewhere in the middle of the show. Yeah. And like I don't know, just. Oh, someone just opens the door.
Oh, okay.
But he gets frustrated thinking that he's fucked.
Yeah, maybe it's just because there's Anthony. Maybe I feel like there wasn't much going on, and obviously that was the point, to just show that he was living a boring old life. But when he was just working in the Cinnabon shop, I was just thinking, move on.
What about when he nearly gets caught? Because there's that scene where he's in the mall and some guy recognizes, like, thinks, "Oh, are you Saul Goodman?" And he's like, "Who's that?" Like, basically denying it.
I like that. I mean, I don't hate it. I would just say it's my least favorite part of the show.
Yeah, I suppose when you've got a show where pretty much everything is great, it's not really a criticism, is it?
Yeah, it's just, if I had to critique something and from my perspective, it would probably be that.
So would you prefer if the Gene stuff was just in the last season?
I'd say so, yes.
Because I remember they did a similar thing with Walter White, but they only had it in season 5.
Yeah, maybe I'd either say just keep it in the last season, or the stuff in the earlier seasons, make it more short and sweet.
I see what you mean, yeah. But also, it's not like it's a dominating part of the show. It's like a rare drop.
It is just a rare drop.
I think maybe the reason why they did it the way they did, just kind of thinking about it from a production standpoint, is that it's to do with the fact that it's a TV format with seasons, and they want to have at least one appearance of Gene in each season. Maybe that's the reason they did it that way. To like kind of keep the audience being like, well, there's this thing that I don't know the answer to, and I want to keep watching and finding out. And then the way it gets paid off at the end of the show is just like.
Yeah, because they like three of the last, or 2 of the last 3 episodes were the black and white, right?
Yeah, the one that's Breaking Bad is in color though. The one that happens like during Breaking Bad with Jesse and Walter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, seeing as Anthony's out the room, we'll move on to the second character who I know is one of your favorites, and that's Mike Ehrmantraut.
All right. Mike. So he had a massive role in this show, along with Breaking Bad, and I was pleasantly surprised when I saw him in the show, because I think he came in. We saw him first as the parking ticket
Yeah,
guy.
it was almost like it was going to be just a cameo, and then it turned out he was one of the main characters.
Yeah,
and
'cause
like got lots of screen
knew,
time.
I knew you were about to see him when we were watching, and then he was there, and then I said to you like, "Who's that?" And you're like, "Oh, it's Mike." And then from there, he gets involved with Gus, and we see how that happened.
Yeah.
And we see his relationship with Nacho.
Yes. Oh my
I
god.
think
Yes.
it's a really special part of the show.
The tension between them is just amazing, and the two things, well, actually more than two things. I think for me, what Better Call Saul does for Mike mostly is it shows how when he sees people that are dead or have died, and that starts with him telling. It starts with him telling the story about his son that got shot in the first season, right? But that continues when he sees, like, when he has to shoot Werner Ziegler in season 4, which again, that's one of my favorite parts of the show. That whole the Germans, I love the Germans, but that whole ending where he had to shoot him was just it's like one of the most hard to watch scenes, but it's so great as a story.
I think as well it shows Mike cares not only for his family but like other characters as well. That
Yeah.
People could die.
Just he has a rough exterior, but he actually has a lot of empathy. It's just we don't see it much in we just don't see it much in Breaking Bad because Walter White is such an irredeemable shit that he can't show it to him. But he does show it to Jesse Pinkman. But the other ones that I wanted to mention were when when Nacho dies as well. That's another one. And then also, and he has to confront his dad and tell him the bad news. And then when his dad's just like, my son's dead. You know, like there's nothing you can do to make this closure happen because it's your fault. You are involved with the gangsters. The gangsters did this to him. Like actually made him feel a lot of guilt. And then I feel like it kind of comes to a head when he sees, it's that moment when he sees Howard and Lalo being buried in the meth lab, when it kind of like it all just like crumbles. And obviously I remember you said when we watched that episode, Dan, that that's like some of the best music in the show, like when Mike sees them being buried.
Yeah,
but yeah, he has to endure a lot of shit in this show.
Funny you mentioned the music. I think until the past couple of years, I don't think I've really ever cared about music in a show. But now, maybe it's because I'm looking from a different, older perspective, but it's so important. And if you nail the music, it's just another piece of the puzzle in making perfect scenes. And
Yeah.
I think it's right up there with the music in Harry Potter.
Yeah, well, I mean, music and film has always been a thing, but I think in TV, in the last sort of 20 years, it's become a big part, and it's really made some great scenes out of shows.
I'd be curious to see if if Better Call Saul won any awards for its sound design.
Yeah, probably I assume it's probably won a lot in, you know, I guess you could say secondary divisions, but it never won any Emmys, which is sad.
Yeah.
Anthony, you want to talk about Mike?
Yeah, I think like Dan was saying, this show does this for a lot of characters. I think if not all its characters, where it gives them a lot deeper of a character, and it's weird kind of coming in and you only know them from Breaking Bad, and because like Mike and Saul are two of these characters that almost one note characters from Breaking Bad, where in here the backstory they get and like the range of emotions you see them experience and feel with them is amazing. And I was surprised the amount of kind of emotion from Mike's character, from his son being killed and then him kind of going and getting the people who's done that and him looking after his daughter-in-law, his son's wife, and their daughter as well. It's huge.
That scene where he has that outburst at his granddaughter is like shocking.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
that was memorable for me. He just lost his shit. Also, the one that I just remember that I loved was when he would get drunk at the bar to cope with stuff, and he'd walk home, and then he'd beat up those people that were just chilling in their yard.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. He got into a lot of fights with thugs in both shows.
And just he's just so good at shooting. He's such a he sniped all those guys that were trying to kill Jimmy. He's a bloody boss.
Yeah, and I think also that journey in the desert that he has with Jimmy is like, it really tests his patience to the absolute limit. And it's sometimes you think that Mike's like, why didn't I just fucking kill this guy? I'm so sick of him.
Set up that like little thing that was gonna drip for water while the sun was down.
But I do love that scene where he kind of hits his end point with Jimmy, and he just says, "This is why I do all this shit. It's not because of me. It's because of people I care about."
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Just like Ram Raiders, eh?
Great. Anyway. But yeah, and also obviously Jonathan Banks, like he has a resting bitch face, and it's very funny.
Yeah.
Walter.
Right. Let's talk about Kim Wexler, who is kind of Jimmy's foil and romance in a sort in the show. I actually, because this was obviously with Saul and Mike, they were in Breaking Bad. So with Kim, like Anthony and I had never seen this person before, or at least I hadn't. And I was really, really surprised as the show went on how important she became. I think the first thing that really comes to mind of like a major holy shit moment with Kim is when she crashes her car. Because she's so up to her neck in stress over everything. And I think the main thing in the show for her is the fact that that whole Mesa Verde case is hanging over her head throughout the entire thing, and it's completely like all of the crazy complications that come from like either side not wanting to settle. The same thing with the Sandy Piper case as well with Jimmy, and how that all ties together. It just reaches so many boiling points for different characters. But I think Kim, by design, is such a great opposite to Jimmy, because I feel like she both challenges him in a lot of ways, but I also think that she does help him, but then at the same time, I feel like he injects his toxicity into her as well, and she realizes that by the end, which is why she dumps him.
100%. I remember when she starts asking him to like, let's go and scam people, and Jimmy's face is kind of like, oh shit, what have I done? What have I created here? And at that, because like you've said, she's an like OG character only in this show. So you and me kind of didn't know her fate at the end. And in the earlier seasons, honestly, I didn't care. I was like, nah, whatever. She's whatever. I know she's not at all in Breaking Bad, so it must not. And she's never mentioned, so whatever. But as it went on, and this is a testament to how the kind of story is written.
Yeah.
As it went on, you're with Jimmy. You're like, oh shit, the character's changed now. You know, she's
Yeah.
more.
Well, I remember. I think
She's
we
the
were.
one being like, hey, let's scam people.
There was one time we were at the pools together. We were very early into season 2, and you were expressing a bit of like, you were sort of had your hands in the air with about Kim, and I think I said to you, I said it might take some time, but I think she will win you over, and I was right about that. It didn't take that long.
No. And even I was really happy in the end of the show with the black and white scenes that she was in those too, because I was worried once she had kind of broken up with Jimmy that would be it. And I was like, ah, fuck, I would have liked to see, you know.
No, she's
But we
crucial.
got to see it. We
She's
got to see it. And I was like, oh,
absolutely,
shit, yeah, let's
she's
go.
absolutely crucial to the finale because she's the reason he's in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, he's the reason he's in prison, but she is the one that exposes him.
Yeah, yeah. And that again in that action, it surprises me because she kind of goes over and she's like, "Oh, let's scam some people," and then her inner conscience is like, "Dude, that's fucking not a good call. Like, that's not a good
Yeah.
thing to do."
And also, I feel like the other big conflict is that HHM love her and they hate Jimmy, and that's a conflict of interest because she's a stand-up lawyer. She's clean and she's really good at her job, and Jimmy is he's underappreciated, but he is a loose cannon and he's dodgy. And it's not, he doesn't fit the clean, he doesn't fit the clean corporate image that Chuck and Howard want.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, as explained in the show, a criminal lawyer, whereas Kim Wexler is more your like very traditional clean lawyer. But because they get together, they rub off on each other in that way, and she ends up becoming a criminal lawyer like Jimmy, kind of.
Yeah. I think I remember as well, when we saw that shift, we were like, oh shit, they've swapped personnel, they've swapped morals essentially. So Jimmy's more like the oh shit, and she's like, nah, let's scam some people. It's fun. We make some money. It's good fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's more so the fact that Jimmy hates to see her become like him because he loathes that part of himself. He knows, he's self-aware that he is really toxic, but he can't help himself. It's like this habit he can't break. He has to be a scam artist. But now that he can see Kim has become a dangerous scam artist, like he hates that he's done that to her.
Yeah.
You've stepped on this precious flower. Dan, your thoughts on Kim?
I just had a thought. Where's it gone? Right. Yeah, Kim. I feel like if she hadn't met Jimmy, she would have just been a very straight-lined lawyer. Would have taken things on like Mesa Verde, gone on to earn a shitload of money, and just live a normal, boring life like what we saw at the end there when she was with her husband, who you could tell that she just wasn't really into. But because she met Jimmy, she was able to, the way he acted around her, and then she was like, no, that's wrong. But then she actually realized that that's what she's like, that excites her. And we don't see too much of her background, but I feel like
we do see a bit of how her mother treated her, though.
Yeah. Which sort of, I guess, indirectly leads to her, how she ends up acting with Jimmy. But I feel like their relationship, when they were scheming, you could see that they were both so happy and thinking about life today. It seems very rare that, you don't see couples like that very often, where they're together, there's no screens, there's no distractions, they're feeding off each other, and it's just so pure. And I thought that was,
but it's also dangerous as well, like it's both.
Oh, of course it's dangerous. That was their thing, and yes, it happened to be dangerous. But yeah, that's probably what I enjoyed most about her. I feel like she was kind of the glue of the show. Not too many. She had interesting moments.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you got to remember, like with HHM, those men involved are always at odds, and I feel like they all kind of feed off her like a succubus. Like she is kind of the one that is the bridge between it all. And then I think a lot of the conflict with Kim is she feels like she has to choose between HHM and Jimmy.
for sure.
And it's like HHM is the right move for her career, but Jimmy is the person out of the options that she would rather, spend her life with at
But
first.
that leads her to discover that her true passion is to do those pro bono cases. Like
Yeah.
that gives her the most satisfaction. And when you find someone that you love like that, you're set.
Yeah, and that whole section of the show where they're sharing an office, like I just from the start I was like, this is not going to end well.
She always kept that lid of the spirits bottle.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. And
the spirits.
Yeah. All right, I think I'll let Anthony start. This is one of my favorite characters in the show, Howard Hamlin, or as we like to call him, the robot.
All right. So, starting off, we love this guy. He's just very funny. Like
Hello, Jimmy.
Yeah, like it was very just. Oh yeah, he's default man character. And very like morally just like I must follow the company procedure. It is important. It is imperative. We follow the company procedure. But as it goes on and as he reaches his end, it becomes like real tragic. But before it gets tragic, it's hilarious because that's a good chunk of the. I'd say 65% of the gaslight is on him. And that was very funny until it wasn't funny, and then he's killed. um, but yeah, it's interesting how I think season 1, season 2, he's kind of a hateable character.
Well, the reason why we feel like that when we first watched the show is because he's aligned with Chuck and he's against Jimmy, and that's it. But when you actually remove the fact that we like Jimmy and that Chuck is against Jimmy, when you remove that from the equation and you just look at Howard's perspective, he's actually not that bad of a guy.
And I think that's what.
And he was really royally fucked over in many ways.
Yeah, and that's what the show does so well is like, it gives you these characters, and then it's like, okay, let's peel this layer back. But what if they weren't correct?
I mean, not to say that Howard's an angel. He does have his vices, for sure.
Yeah.
But
like it was, and I think one of the big points of the show where I was like, oh shit, was when after the death of Chuck, which I assume we'll get onto, he kind of goes to Jimmy and he feels like absolute fucking shit. Whereas Jimmy's just like, who cares? Yeah, it was all your fault.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Like,
that was savage.
Shit. Okay, that's fucking harsh, man.
I think that moment in the show, like season 4, when that happens, is when the switch in my head happens where I'm like, holy shit, Jimmy is like a really bad guy.
Yeah. And I think it's like when these less guilty characters start to get fucked is the realization of like, oh, this guy I'm watching is an all-out hero.
Yeah, and that's kind of that at that point in the show, because you realize how much damage. I mean, you already kind of knew it with Saul Goodman and Breaking Bad anyway, but because it's like you're starting from an earlier point in time, you kind of give him a bit of a fresh page, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But but it's because it happens at that point in the show, it then turns Jimmy into this like guilty pleasure because you know he's a bad guy, but you can't help but love him because he's so charming.
Yeah. It's almost like he's conning you in a way. Yeah, like you're watching and you're going, okay, he just wants to be a lawyer. And then as it goes on, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, no. The other one was when he manipulates that old woman and then all her friends turn on her. I hated him for that.
Yeah.
It's so mean. Like, it's funny when you look at it out of context, but when I was like engrossed in the show, I was just like, why are you doing this?
You're like, don't do that. She just wants to play bingo with her friends.
Yeah, imagine if that happened to our grandmas. That would be horrible.
Yeah, it would like they because they she doesn't have that much time left, and without her friends there, it's like very lonely. It's so cruel.
Her friends are all that she had.
And not only are they ignoring her, but they're actively like giving her the cold shoulder and like being bullies.
Yeah. And I think it's again when because Jimmy just goes and says it to her, and it's like, the again the acting from that late, and I know we're on Howard. I just want to the acting from that old lady is like 10 out of 10. That's how
Oh
I'd
yeah.
expect an old woman to be like
Oh
disappointed.
mate, all of the fucking old small chips people in this show are all like 10 out of 10. They are hilarious.
Yeah.
They are all so funny.
But my favorite Howard scam was hiring the prostitutes to
Oh my god.
yell at them in the golf
Yep.
club or whatever.
And the
it was.
cocaine as well.
Yeah. But yes, very funny, but becomes tragic.
Yeah. He's a
That
tragic
death-
character.
His death, I think, actually like shocked the shit out of me. Like I think I visibly was like, oh, when he was like killed.
And you know what's the crazy thing about it is that Lalo knows absolutely nothing about Howard. To him he's just some random bystander who's in his way.
But again, that's where like the world of Jimmy being in law and the world of Jimmy dealing with these criminals kind of coincides.
Yeah, it's like
So
a
when-
perfect
when they-
it's like a
when they-
perfect like thematic paradox
Yeah.
because what it is like both those worlds collide at the same time and Jimmy can't stop it. Yeah, because
when
it's
they meet
already
as well,
fucked.
you're as shocked as he is. You're like, oh shit, Howard's fucking dead. He didn't even know that guy. He didn't even know what Jimmy was doing. He just walked
Yeah.
in to like talk to him.
Like
yell at him,
literally
and then
hilarious
that's-
that it's crazy because Nacho and not Nacho, Lalo and Howard are buried together, but they never knew each other.
Yeah.
Like they were complete strangers, and yet they represent the two sides of Jimmy's life.
Interesting.
Yeah. Dan, your thoughts on Howard?
Well, yeah, Anthony was talking about his shenanigans. I think for me, my favorite thing that happened to him was when Jimmy gave him those photos with that chemical rubbed on them, and then he must have Howard touched the photos, and then I'm not too sure. How did he end up?
Well, his eyes get all like weird because he's high.
It's like some kind of reaction, yeah, and just when they were all in that meeting room, and then people would have seen his pupils, or the other old guy, Davis, the main guy, Cliff Main, and he already had all the seeds had been planted, and then he would have just seen Howard's pupils and been like, nah, this guy's a bloody druggie. That was such a good idea. Just the amount of planning.
Yeah, but it's also like it's crazy because like Howard didn't. It's not like he deserved it. The only reason they did it is because they're trying to get them to settle the money as well. So they're trying to fuck over his career so that he can't argue on behalf of HHM. It's very, very shady. But then also that whole thing they did near the end of the show where they talked about how he has that wife.
What was that again?
Well, like he kind of has this wife, but they're not really like together.
And then Kim goes and gives like not the evidence. She admits like everything that they did to the wife at the end.
Yeah. That they were kind of just separated.
Mm.
But yeah, Howard for me, at the start, he's obvious. It's someone that you think, nah, this guy's a dick, and then you come to realize that he's just a man doing his job, kind of doing what's best for business when he has to listen to.
Yeah, it's like him and Jimmy go on like the opposite arcs to each other. because like Howard starts out, you think he's he's in the wrong, but by the end you realize he's innocent and he gets killed. Whereas Jimmy, like, he's so lovable, but then you realize how terrible of a person he is by the end.
And obviously his death was one of the biggest shocks of the show, and knowing it was coming once again, and just seeing your guys.
But also the fact that
I think. Hang on, let me just finish. I'm pretty sure after we saw that, and then the episode ended, I think we just all sat in the room for like 1 or 2 minutes and just didn't even know what to say. Like that. When does a show have an effect on you like that?
That's pretty rare.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Howard had been fucked with so much that by the time Lalo walks into the room, he thinks it's like another joke, and it's not.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say about him, really. I think.
Yeah, he's great though.
Love it.
He's just the mannerisms. You talk about like characters in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul with mannerisms. Like, I feel like Howard's one of those characters. He's just so unique.
Every time he was on the screen, you guys were
So
chuckling.
funny. He's so funny.
Yeah. Very amusing.
Okay, Dan, I'll let you start on this one because I know you No, I was going to talk about Nacho Varga, because I know you're a big fan of Nacho.
Yeah, I think Nacho hit me deep in the feels. His whole storyline. You think he's just some typical thug, but you come to understand that. I feel he probably just got far too deep into things, and
I feel like he's one of the most unexpected highlights of the show.
Yeah, any scene that he was in, I really enjoyed. Like, I feel like any scene that he was in, you were kind of on edge because you didn't really know what was going to happen, but you knew something illegal was going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, and the scenes with his father, I don't know. Maybe I just felt emotional seeing, the care that he had for his father, and it must have hurt him so much to just see how like what he was doing in the drug business was doing to his father. And
I think my favorite thing about Nacho is the way that he ruins Hector. I love that. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, that took some serious execution and balls.
I think as well, because knowing Hector from Breaking Bad, and he's obviously this like little old man in a wheelchair with a bell. But then when you meet Hector and Better Call Saul, he's up and talking and very angry, and
you're like, how does he turn into
exactly.
But also, you realize how much of a piece of shit he is as a person as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, also some of my favorite parts of the show with Nacho was when he was doing the deal with that nerd guy.
Oh my god, yes! Oh, my baseball cards.
He's probably just standing there watching this guy like, come on, man, like, someone's gonna rob you one day. He probably would have done it himself, but yeah, I just love watching that part.
Yeah, because they're so opposites as people, yet they're doing the same thing. They're both criminals, technically speaking.
I was sad that he had to die, but I think it was fitting for the show that he.
Well, I think the point of the scene is that he gets to go out on his own terms. Because he hated being controlled by the cartel.
It felt like the whole show. He wanted to get out, but he just kept getting stuck and had to do everything and didn't.
Well, yeah, he fucked over Hector to try to get out, but then Gus noticed it, and then he ended up under Gus's control.
Yeah, instead.
I wish that Gus saw his potential and just somehow decided to trust him and then took him under his wing as one of his right hand men or whatever you call it, side people.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Gus wasn't wanting to use anyone he could to be, you know, super duper rich, he probably would have done that, but
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, that the dynamic between Nacho and Lalo as well is also a great part of the show. Like,
He
all the
did
tension.
so well to keep Lalo not being suspicious.
That whole arc at the end of season 5 in Mexico is one of my favorite parts of the show. It's where the house burns and not like they're trying to kill Lalo. That's
he goes outside and Lalo's out there drinking already. You're like,
it's
shit,
that whole thing was just top tier. Yeah. Anthony, your thoughts on Nacho?
So I remember when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, and the post-credit scene had the actor. Hang on, it was Michael Mando.
Michael Mando.
And everyone was going, "Oh shit, it's the guy from Better Call Saul." Now I didn't watch Better Call Saul back when it was, came out, and it was fresh and new and hip. But I was aware that this actor was in it, and I was like, okay, I've heard good things. I heard correct things, because like Dan was saying, his arc was another tragic one. And it sucked seeing multiple times where he's like, I just want out of like this business, only to succeed. And then Gus is like, actually, you work for me now, and you're even deeper in it. So yeah, and you fucked up. So we're gonna have you killed, but you can escape. But we're gonna kill you anyways, just quicker. It's almost like, why didn't you just, you know, another tragic, very sad character.
Yeah.
Another great scene I just remembered was when one of the lower drug dealers got busted in that house, and then it looked like the cops were going to find it.
I remember that.
Nacho went in and got it, like basically risked everything to prove to Lalo.
Oh yeah, he like endgame clutched it. He fully just. Oh.
That was so good.
Yeah, he there were so many points in the show where he came like either close to death or close to being caught. It was like inches away.
Yeah, I think the reason I liked him so much is just because whenever it was his scene, it was just so, you felt so on edge. You really wanted to, like, you just had no clue what was going to happen. I think that's what did it.
Yeah, I think he's also a perfect example of like when you get involved with this kind of life, it's like this cancer that just never goes away. It's like this, which is funny because Breaking Bad literally is about a man with cancer. But it's like there was nothing he could do to get rid of the drug cartel from his life. He just couldn't escape. It was impossible. But yeah, that scene where he finally confesses to Hector that he did this, he made him get a stroke. That was very satisfying.
Yeah. Fuck Hector.
Hector is so funny though. I love that scene where Don Eladio says, "I don't want Hector out," so you make the ding 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 ding.
Yeah, I like Don Eladio. He was a funny bloke.
He's great in both shows. That he actually, his scene with Nacho and Better Call Saul is great as well when they're sitting at the table. It's like he's actually almost like looking out for Nacho in a way. Like he sees a lot of potential in him.
Yeah, well, he did. He had that chat with him, and gave him some alcohol. Shared the woman of the house.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to another one of my favorite characters, who is once again with Vince Gilligan's shows the epitome of mannerisms, and that's Chuck McGill. My God, that actor. I feel like when we're talking about characters of mannerisms, I think he's right up there with Hank and Walter, because he's so just all the little faces he does, and all the little like, and his bloody tinfoil and the tinfoil blanket, and like just he's only really properly in the first half of the show. I mean, he has a few like posthumous cameos, which I think the posthumous cameos are amazingly handled. Like that tragic one where they're drunk and singing together at the karaoke is really sad because of how it all turned out.
That was,
Yeah, but yeah, just like Chuck is a deeply insecure character because he's everything that Jimmy isn't, and he's an obsessive, like OCD compulsive person who thinks everything should be like in order and perfect, and law has to be done in the rightful way, and you cannot break the rules. And he hates his brother because his brother, you know, represents everything that's the opposite of his values, but he tries to control him, and he manipulates him, and he over exaggerates his electromagnetic sensitivity issue. And in a way, it's kind of more like a placebo, because that's kind of proven in the court scene that it's more of a placebo than it is an actual issue. Is that it's actually just his like anxiety as opposed to it being just a reaction to electronics. But yeah, I think Chuck is a highlight, and I think the actor is so funny.
Yeah, well, I think he's got some seriously bad conditions, but the electromagnet thing is not one of them. And just the fact that he, you know, I'm an only child, so I wouldn't know what a relationship is like with a brother, but just the way that he valued the law above all, even just I couldn't believe it. When we found out that he was the one that, you know, stopped him from having all the job.
He fucked up his life. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like how could he do this? And it's just we see that he just values the law so highly, and he's like, no.
Yeah, but it's also like,
you can't cheat.
but it's also his value of law isn't honorable. It's very selfish. He wants control of everything. He wants everything to be done like neat and tidy, and you know,
it has to be done his way.
Yeah,
his way is the right
it's
way.
like very autocratic and very authoritarian to the point where it loses its humanity in a way, and that's why he gets so frustrated with people, because there's no human being on Earth that can actually adhere to his expectations, and that includes himself.
Yeah. But for me, very entertaining. Definitely a character that is unique.
And the way like how he's just so like unbelievably ungrateful for everything Jimmy did for him as well. Like he's just it's rotten.
Bringing items for him every day.
Yeah.
Just to, you know, throw it back in his face, really.
Yeah, and then he goes up in a ball of flames.
Yeah, I guess that was a fitting ending for him. I feel like I'd be interested to see if there was talks about other ways that he could have, if he stayed in the show, or what would have happened. But
yeah, but I think it is just
probably just been fed up. He's getting old. Can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just like it's all the events that culminate, and really, I think the breaking point was the court scene when he was like publicly embarrassed in front of his ex-wife as well. Like that's what really set him off, is that he was so publicly embarrassed by Jimmy, and it like shrunk his ego down to like an ant. But that whole thing of like he recorded Jimmy and his conversation, and then when he hired those guys to be in the other room when Jimmy broke into his house, so fucked up. Yeah. Anthony, your thoughts on Chuck? Is he there? Oh, he's in the toilet. No, he's in the toilet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Chuck. Bro.
Yeah, his bloody house with all the little, like, the gas lights and everything, and there's no electronics in there. It's like an old medieval house.
And he's just satisfied with reading the newspaper every day. Reading books, I guess. Very old-fashioned life. As you'd expect from someone in their 60s or whatever, however old he was.
Oh yeah, and that last scene they do in season 6 with Chuck and Jimmy is just so good.
What was that one again?
It's like right at the end of the show. It's, I think, because remember when Jimmy, he has like there's that scene he has with Walter White at the end of Better Call Saul, but he also has a scene with Chuck as well. And it's like kind of it's supposed to be like a scene from the past, and it's like it shows them in a sense like where they almost connect, but then they don't.
Are you talking about the karaoke one?
No, that's because that's from season 4. I'm talking about the end of the show. They're in Chuck's house, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just remember that being a really great scene because it's like they almost connect on something, but then like life gets in the way of it.
Yeah. I heard the toilet flush.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
All right, Anthony's back. Your thoughts on Chuck?
Okay, here we go. I have some things to say. So, give me a second here. Where are we?
One.
Okay. The actor Michael McKean is actually a massive voice actor. I did my research. So, and a lot of the stuff is like funny stuff. He's actually a comedy guy. To my knowledge, which is not a lot, but this was a real serious role for him. I think he did well. However, he has very memeable sayings and noises. And I know we fooled around a lot of them, joked around the like stuff like that. Stuff like that was hilarious. And again, I had seen prior to the show, there's a meme of him when he's falling.
Yeah, when he hits his head on the table in the photocopy shop.
I'd seen that meme before. So when we saw the scene, I was like, oh, this like a dire situation.
I love when he goes to hospital and they go to scan him and he goes, no electricity, no shocks.
So as well, prior to this, I'd seen the whole courtroom scene. I saw that. So I knew from the beginning that he was like actually psychosemantics, whatever, with everyone being like, electricity, no. Almost gaslit himself in a sense, you could say. So I knew it was all a ruse. However, and the show does this a lot, it was still really good, really enjoyable, and in the end when he like suicides, I was like, oh fuck, he's dead. He's just like that's it. It hit me by surprise. But again, it's sad when it like it's that flashback and it's like he didn't want Jimmy to be in law from the start. It's sad, because they're brothers.
And also that because you know how he's such an OCD freak.
Yeah.
That whole panic attack he has when Jimmy changes the dates and he's like, no, I could not have made a single mistake. This is not possible.
Yeah. And again, watching that, you have the exact same reaction as the courtroom. You're like, oh, yeah, he's deranged. Like he's fucked.
Yeah, because like the idea of being a lawyer like consumes everything that he is.
Yeah. And I think it's a brilliant move when Jimmy gets his ex-wife in the courtroom, because for Chuck, it's kind of like, look at what you've sacrificed.
Yeah.
And then in that same courtroom, look at what you've just like fucked up now because you have a little outburst.
And then, of course, later it comes back and he gets his just desserts because then Kim is in the same courtroom as him when he's swearing under oath.
Yeah.
And also, I think we noticed this detail a bit into the show, but when he's gene hacking and he gets older, he actually starts to look like Chuck, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. All right. Gus Fring. What more is there to say? I mean, in Breaking Bad, he was already one of the best. And then he's in Better Call Saul, and they just do even more of the best stuff. Yeah. Dan,
I feel like you
start.
He just replicated Breaking Bad. You know, he just maintained.
He's exactly the same. Like in every way, he's exactly the same.
It's another example of like an absolute 10 out of 10 A-tier actor in this show.
Actually, you know what? I've just remembered one of my favorite Gus scenes is in Better Call Saul, and it's when he's in his chicken restaurant at closing, and it's just him and that one guy who's usually the supervisor. And there's like a few marks on the fryer, and he's like, "Do you think this is acceptable?"
That was so jarring, that whole thing.
Yeah, but I just that moment has stuck with me.
That's just how he is.
But the fact that because Better Call Saul has different characters, we see him save Hector from dying so that he can be the one to plan his death, or like see him live out a life with a stroke, like and actually suffer. And the other thing about it is that obviously Lalo's in this show, and so Gus has to plan around that, and because Lalo's a really crafty guy, and he's like an actual match for Gus in terms of like intelligence. But obviously Gus in the end ends up shooting Lalo.
I liked watching Gus play Space Invaders while everyone's playing.
And actually, you know what's interesting as well is that in Breaking Bad he was very much an antagonist to Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. But in Better Call Saul, he's obviously not a good person, but he's more of a protagonist in the show in terms of point of view because he's against the Salamancas, who are much worse.
That's a decent point.
Yeah, it's complicated obviously because he's he works for the cartel and he's a meth dealer, and he's a has a lot of problems as a person, and a bit like Chuck actually. He's kind of like a perfectionist, but in a different way. Chuck's very like uppity and anxious about perfection and making no mistakes, whereas Gus is a perfectionist in the sense that he takes his time with everything and he very rarely raises his voice.
I think the best way to sum up Gus Fring is he's playing chess and everyone's playing checkers.
That's a very good point. Yeah,
he's aware of it too, so I think it keeps him very calm as he knows he's 8
but
steps
that's probably what makes Lalo such a great match for him, because he can play chess with him.
Yeah.
Another thing I love is that one thing about Better Call Saul is that we get, for the Breaking Bad characters, they get a different ending. So it's like they get 2 endings, because they get one in Breaking Bad and they get one in this show as well. And I love the way that they gave them like different endings from the other show, because in Breaking Bad, Gus explodes from Hector's wheelchair, whereas in this show, Gus's last scene is actually really nice because he socializes with that guy at the bar. Like they're talking about their passion for wine. It's almost like you could see a world where Gus could get out of the cartel and actually live a really nice life.
That scene for me was very jarring because it's almost a completely different character that you see from the whole this show and Breaking Bad. It's another it's him, and it's probably like the real Gus Fring, where he's just like, love this wine and the taste and the texture and blah blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
well, it's like it shows you like an alternate version of him that would, you know, if he wasn't involved in this whole meth shit,
Yeah.
that's the life he could live, and it would be really pleasant. But because he chooses to stay in the cartel and he can't get out, the ending he has in Breaking Bad is where he ends up
Yep.
as a consequence. But it kind of like it gives you like a window into what would happen if he never got involved.
Mm.
So it's very interesting. But yeah, Dan, your thoughts on Gus Fring?
Well, for me, I feel like he just carried on from Breaking Bad. It was just he just maintained the standard that we've come to expect. You know, whenever there was a scene with Gus in it, like you just knew it was going to be good. You knew it was something serious was going down, and just seeing his no nonsense kind of style of like, for example, the thing I actually like that I've just remembered is he always had like really short phone calls, and like with those burners, it just like say one or two words to get his orders across.
I
just
love in a scene where he ends a phone call pissed off and he snaps the phone really angrily.
Yeah, that's one thing I loved about his character, just those really short and sweet conversations where they're like, yep, do this, yep. Or just like one word as a text message or something like that. But yeah, we obviously get to get more Gus content, which is just precious, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, I can't really think of too many specific moments that I loved because it was just probably all of it, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'll carry that over because it's relevant. You can talk about Lalo Salamanca as well, who's a big part of the second half of the show. He kind of replaces Chuck as a main character because he comes into the show right after Chuck dies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I knew that he was going to be coming in, and I just thought you especially you, Connie. I thought you were going to really just be like, wow, this guy is just a breath of fresh air. You know, he's a perfect match for Gus, and he's got charisma.
Oh yeah, he's the most like seductive person in the show, probably.
Yeah, like at points I'm watching and I'm like, damn, I actually like this guy. He's supposed to be the enemy here, but he's just
charisma 100.
Yeah, yeah, charisma 100. I'd say Lalo is in my top 3 favorite characters in the show for sure. Just I found him so entertaining. The way that he managed the situation, like he always had like a cheeky grin.
It's almost like it's effortless to him.
Yeah, and then but you also see that when he goes to his home and the way that he speaks to the staff at his house, you see a different side to him where he's like sort of like Gus, where he's not going to cop any shit, but it's like he changes into his charisma mode around the right people.
Yeah, because he's sociopathic and he's doing it to manipulate you.
Yeah, and just from the way that he dealt with the raid, you know, he got out of that situation, and then he's like, hang on, maybe it'd be better if everyone thinks I'm dead. And he's got the smarts. And
I loved whenever he would have a phone call with Hector.
Yeah.
And Hector would always get so excited by Lalo.
Yeah,
he's his top guy.
He knew how good he was. He knew that he still had a chance, even though he was a vegetable.
I love when he comes into Saul's house and Kim, and he's like, I just want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, he plays a massive role in the show. Like he's involved in some of the biggest moments.
Yeah.
And yeah, he comes
That,
out,
oh my god, when he goes to Germany, holy shit.
He's
That
on a
whole
treasure hunt.
storyline just like completely threw me off. It was like, it was so surprising.
Yeah, and he meets Werner Ziegler's wife at a bar, and then she was almost going to invite him into her home. He was that good. But I think she said she had work the next day, but all he needed to do was find where she lived, so that was just...
Yeah, and then he ended up getting information by one of the workers. But like that whole, just when, as soon as Lalo goes to Germany, coming off when he escaped being killed at the end of season 5, that is not at all what I would have predicted. Like if you gave me like 100 guesses of where he would next turn up, Germany is like, would not get anywhere near my guesses. Like it's such a crazy surprise. But then,
doing a stakeout,
but then when it actually happens and you piece it together, it completely makes sense.
He showed good patience being in that drain.
Literally down to the last minute, he could have exposed Gus to Eladio. But he doesn't because he gets shot by a gun that Gus hid in his basement. That's just...
almost
perfect.
Executed the perfect plan.
Yeah, and then I love when he gets shot, he smiles as he dies.
Very
He's finally
good.
been outplayed.
Yeah, he's perfect. I love him. Anthony, your thoughts on Lalo?
Okay, so this is another character / actor I knew from MCU first, Hawkeye. Now in Hawkeye, it's the opposite role, so like you think he's a villain, but he's a hero. Whereas in this, he's evil, man. Again, it was a very welcome kind of secondary villain for the series, I guess, or one of the villains, I'll say, for the series. One of the opponents, I should say, for Saul to go, because like we've said, nobody was really good guy. But it's again, he does the job of like mixing Saul's lawyer stuff and his drug deal stuff together. And I had to laugh when Kim like successfully gaslights him when he goes to their flat the first time, or he shows up at their house the first time. And they're like, no, the car broke down and he had to walk from the desert. I could not believe they got away with that, and he was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Very surprised. But of course, he's on the same playing field as Gus. Super smart, super just like focused, oriented, for himself or for.
Well, he's also very useful to Hector because Hector's really stupid and hot-headed, and he needs someone like Lalo to do his dirty work for him.
Yeah. It was interesting as well seeing kind of a character behind Hector, and like that, like I think he's related to Hector.
Yeah.
They're
it's like his
uncle or something.
Yeah. So he's Hector's nephew. Yeah. And he's cousins with Tuco, Lionel, and Marco. Because I think Tuco is Hector's son. Is that correct? Or is he also a nephew?
I think Tuco is a nephew.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting seeing, obviously Tuco and Hector's kind of family, and kind of the different, I guess, puzzle pieces to the family, because they're all like fucked up in a way, in different ways.
You know, because you could say this about a lot of characters, really, but I feel like Lalo Salamanca is one of those characters where the actor really makes the role happen. Doesn't He's so important to that character, is that actor being able to be the way he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly, actually, while we've mentioned Tuco, I loved that he was in Better Call Saul, because I think we'd all agree that he did not have enough time in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, although he doesn't have much time in Better Call Saul either. He just ends up in jail.
No.
But yeah,
I love that they put him in it, because that whole part with his grandma upstairs, or his fucking
yeah,
mum, or whatever they call it. It was just, yeah.
but also it creates a great introduction to Nacho, right? That's the purpose of having him in it. It actually has a lot of substance, and there's so many great little characters in the show, like the nail salon lady with the cucumber water. Like, that's just a little running gag and everything. Then you got all the lawyers, like Rick Schweigart. He's great in the show.
Cliff May.
You got the guy who plays the fake vet as well. That guy, so interesting. Yeah, and obviously you mentioned before the nerd guy with the baseball cards. You got some of those like side characters who are also in Breaking Bad, like Gus has those those henchmen that do his job.
The twins.
Well, yeah, the twins as well. Yeah,
the twins. I love the twins.
Yeah, the bald twins that say nothing.
they say nothing, and it's just great.
I think I said this throughout Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but especially Breaking Bad, is like you can always guarantee when you watch the show that you're going to see bald white men, like bald old white men, and silent Mexicans.
We haven't spoken about Huel yet either.
Oh yeah, Huel is a classic.
Huel was just, you love the guy.
I mean, he's like throughout most of both shows, he's like really funny and useful. But I actually think in Better Call Saul, he gets a scene where he changes for one moment, where he looks at Jimmy and he says, "Why do you do all this?" And it's actually like, whoa, he actually like criticized something, which is so rare for Huel. But
Jimmy
obviously,
did that whole phone call business, or setting up all those phones, that was for Huel.
Yeah, I think Huel gets a best moment in both shows. I think his most iconic moment is Breaking Bad is when he lies on the pile of money. Obviously, that's the meme. But his best moment in Better Call Saul, I've already mentioned it. It's when he puts the phone in Chuck's pocket. It's just so good.
Yeah, that was one of the things I'm mad I had already seen it online. Because of how it's set up and like the payoff as well.
Do you remember when he like not hotwire, but he got like a little circuit board that acted as a car key, and that was all done in like a record time to unlock a car?
Oh yes. They were under time constraints because the valet was coming back.
The Kettlemans cracked me up as well, like how they were so just prideful and righteous about my husband. And they refused to settle. They absolutely refused to settle.
The dude was like just chill, but he was so whipped.
Yeah, and like Kim's like, you should settle because otherwise this is going to end badly for you. And she's like, yeah, but he's not wrong. We're going to trial.
And they bloody go camping down the road.
Oh my god, that was so funny. Yeah, but you got the skateboarders, you got Tuco's grandmother, you've got all the policemen, you've got, oh my god, Jimmy's like film crew that did the ads. They were so funny.
The one stingy guy, the tall dude was like,
the tall guy was great, and then there was like
the girl
as well. Hello. Yeah, really. It's just weird, but the camera guy as well.
Probably the best one, the most useful one. She did all the voices for the phone call.
Yeah, she was funny. I think she was also the kindest. She gave Jimmy money when he was really poor.
That one guy's like, don't damage my camera.
I always felt bad for that doctor who has to treat Chuck because he just makes life so difficult for her.
Mm.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have this electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And she's like, well, I've never heard of this before. And he's like, well, it exists. I'm telling you it exists.
Yeah, it's like dealing with an angry customer at
Yeah.
McDonald's.
It was almost like for her, it was considered controversial to say that you're faking something.
Mm.
But because she has to be of service to him, it's really difficult.
And like for me, because I'd already seen the clip where it's proven he's like lying, or like it's not real. So for me, the scene, like I was like, oh, it's not real. She's right. But the acting is so good that I'm like, there was a moment where I was like, oh shit, is it real? Like,
Yeah,
I didn't see
when
the
you know
evidence.
something already, but the show's so good it convinces you that you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's like it was gaslighting you.
It was. It actually. Those early seasons, I was like, wait, what? Is it real? Is he like healed midway or something?
I loved what's the guy from Davis and Maine called?
Cliff.
Cliff. He's so stubborn. He's just incredibly stubborn, and like every time that Kim and Jimmy try to sabotage his thing to get him to settle, he just refuses. He's like, I will not settle. I will not. And then when that bloody old guy doesn't want to move house.
Sorry, no. Cliff was the Davis and Maine guy. The guy you're talking
Managing.
about.
Yeah.
The guy you're talking about is the owner of the bank.
Yes, sorry, you're right.
They did say his name in the recap. I can't think of it right now, but yeah. So stubborn. And then it got to a point where he had to like go outside in the parking lot with Jimmy because he just done so much niggling.
Sorry. Clifford Maine is the small chips guy.
Yeah. Clifford's the small chips guy.
Yeah, who Jimmy makes an absolute fool of himself working for him.
Yeah.
And then he's the one that they convince that Howard is on cocaine and using prostitutes.
Yeah, that old guy.
The guy
won't move out of the house.
That guy's fucking hilarious. The guy I was thinking of is Kevin.
Yeah.
Mesa Verde Bank. That's the one. Mesa Verde Bank. Yeah, Mesa Verde. I think I got Davis and Maine and Mesa Verde mixed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kevin was the most stubborn guy.
The whole part with the old man who refused to move out. That whole part was just comedic gold for me. Like even in the recap, it showed the thing where they spray painted a face of like a god, and then they got all these people to come onto the property.
Yeah,
it's just bloody out of the box thinking to the max.
Yeah, and then there was like, oh, there's these things we need to dig up in the ground.
Yeah, there's bloody archaeology in the ground. So the builders are like, what the heck is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I love that they in a show with lawyers, they set up a situation where you have like the two most stubborn men in the entire show that are against each other and neither one will lose. Yeah, we kind of mentioned it briefly when we talked about Mike, but Werner Ziegler and the Germans was one of my favorite parts of the show as well. I loved that whole subplot. And like how he was just so naive, and when he got drunk on the beers, like in the pub, he just leaked so much information about the secret project.
That was very frustrating for me. I wish I could have stopped it from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, Anthony, because remember, like, when is it? I mean, he's kind of just season 4, really, but he's such a big part of Mike's story, and then Mike has to shoot him at the end because of what happened.
Yeah, it's sad that because he kind of goes in and he's like, look, I'll do what you want. Just tell me like what to do. I'll get the men to do whatever you need. And like the thing that fucks it is he's like, oh, I miss home and I miss my wife and I miss this. And Mike's like, yeah, okay, we can get, like, you can't though. It's against the rules. And he's like, but I just miss her. And it's because he like goes and leaves. Mike's like, fuck, like you fucked it. That's your fault. And Werner Ziegler's like, well, yep, sorry, but Mike, like at that point, and we know as well, we're like, Mike's like, nope, I have to kill you now. I like you spoke you spoke to somebody about it. You shouldn't have. And he's like, oh no, sorry. And it's like, dude, it's too late.
It's like a real situation of, I'll give you $1 million if you do this.
Yeah.
And his one is, I'll give you $1 million if you dig this hole, but you can't see any of your family or your wife, or
yeah,
can't see any of your friends for a year or whatever it was.
Yep.
And he failed, and it makes you think, shit, would I fail if I had to do that? But I reckon I'd be fine. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't have as much to leave behind as he does.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah, and also, as I said, he's when he gets on the bears, like all of the gates just open because he's such a social guy and he wants to like tell you interesting things about his life.
Chat to randoms about his interests.
Yep.
Yeah, because like the conversations he actually has, when you remove the fact that they're supposed to be a secret, they're actually really interesting conversations. But it's just he's not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
We were watching something the other day and it had Werner Ziegler in it as an actor.
Oh yeah, it was Inglourious Bastards, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. That one. I finished that on my own, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
That was good. Anyway.
Such a good film. I love the ending.
Yep.
And that actor who plays Hans Lander is just so perfect. Anyway, another character who was in Breaking Bad who appeared in Better Call Saul was Crazy 8. Because in Breaking Bad, he's only in like the first few episodes and then Walter kills him with that plate.
Yeah, he was like one of the money counters. Or he was a dealer, but he was like a lower down dealer.
Yeah, but he gets quite a bit to do in Better Call Saul. And yeah, there's so much crossover. Like you get bits of Lydia and Hank with Stephen Gomez. You get obviously Huel, we mentioned before, Don Eladio. Gail Bedecker has a cameo as well in Better Call Saul. And obviously in the season 6 you get Walter White and Jesse Pinkman as well. Who Jesse definitely looks older and sounds older, which is a bit jarring. Kind of mentioned that about continuity, but the actual character stuff they do is really interesting. I think the scene that Jesse has with Kim Wexler during the events of Breaking Bad is really interesting to me. The fact that those two have come in contact with Saul in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And also what was so interesting about seeing Walter White have that scene with Saul is that now we're seeing it from Saul's perspective. Walter White looks like a much worse person than we initially saw him as when it was from his point of view in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Because I remember, Anthony, when we watched that scene, you said, was he always this much of a dick? I'm like, yeah, he was, but you didn't realize it because the show was from his perspective, so you understand him more. But now we're seeing it from Saul's side of it, and he actually looks way worse.
I think as well, what these two shows do is perspective is a massive thing they do really, really well. And it does that through the backstory of each character. Because like we've said, a lot of these characters, new and recurring, the backstory is massive. And they act like actual people. Because some shows would just be like, character. But these ones are like very well written and well acted also.
Yeah. And I kind of mentioned it a bit before with El Camino, but my only real major issue with this show is that the actors who are also in Breaking Bad look older in this show, even though it's supposed to be a prequel. And that's kind of the most jarring thing about Better Call Saul. It doesn't wear on me as much over time, because once you get used to the way they look, it's not as bad. But when we've just watched Breaking Bad and then we see them in Better Call Saul and they're so much older, despite the fact that the characters are supposed to be younger. Like, it is definitely noticeable.
Yeah.
But there's not much you can do about that. I will say, though, Bob Odenkirk as Jimmy, they made him look younger somehow. I don't know how they did it, but especially like in the first season, I think it's because of the hair and the makeup they do on him. They somehow made him look younger, and that was cool.
Fixed his hairline.
Yeah, and obviously, all throughout the show, the direction, the camera work, and all the lighting and everything is all just, it's masterful. It's such a great show to look at. Like, they made so many great choices of presenting certain scenes. Yeah, it's I reckon Better Call Saul as a show is a masterpiece of television.
Absolutely. If you're watching now and you haven't seen it, even though we've probably just
spoiled the whole thing,
you must watch it. You must.
Yeah.
Yep.
Breaking Bad first, then El Camino, and then this. And by the end of it, like, you will have a hole in your stomach because you will have just lost access to more episodes after 11 seasons of gold, but it's still worth it.
And this, if you have seen it, this is your cue to rewatch everything again.
Yes, because it has rewatch value.
That's it.
Which someday I will do.
Me too. I'll watch it for a third time. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I think I need a bit of space away from it for a while, but one day I will go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah, closing thought from me. I assume we're near the end here.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, like, your further thoughts, anything else you want to say, and sort of your closing thoughts.
I've always, just the lore in general, I've never really thought too hard about it or been like, how does this actually work? And then watching the show has helped me get a sort of very simple grasp of how it all works, at least in America.
Well, it's Better Call Saul is also an educational show, another reason to watch it.
Yeah, and I actually really like that aspect of it, where I could enjoy what I'm watching along with actually gain some knowledge about how things actually work.
Not only just like what the laws are, but how people like wiggle around them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and then lastly, the way that there's the Jimmy storyline with the law, and then there's the Mike storyline with the drugs and the cartel and all that, and how, I'd say there's a perfect balance of those storylines throughout the seasons. And you're watching an episode and you get like little snippets of little scenes of both, and it's just perfect. You get what you want when you're watching. That's how I felt. And then the way that, and in the end, they intertwine and it all wraps up with how it does.
And also ties into Breaking Bad and provides another conclusion to Breaking Bad as well, like after the fact.
Yeah, like I just love when questions get answered, things you find out why this happened. And some shows, they just don't give you that, but I feel like...
And remember what I said when we were watching the show, there were a couple of plot holes in Breaking Bad that Better Call Saul fixed, like how did Gus know that Walter White was outside his house, and then in Better Call Saul it's revealed he's got that whole like CCTV room in his house that's like it's in a secret compartment.
Yeah.
I love it when they do that.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen. Anthony, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of those shows that like people go on about. I think any top 10 shows, people will be like, yeah, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. So before I saw both, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, sure, man, it's a show about drugs, whatever. after seeing both, I was kind of like, ah, you know that meme with Danny DeVito and he stands up and says, "I get it." That was me because it really is. Really
Also,
good.
just to say, when we rewatch Breaking Bad, I need to make sure you're there, Anthony, because you need to see all of it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to. But yeah, I get it. The show's really really good. Like pretty much every single actor and actress does like their part and more. It creates a beautiful, well, not beautiful, or beautifully displayed little story there. Yeah, real good, real nice.
And not only is it like a great serious drama, it's very, very funny all the way through. It's a very funny show. Like the jokes, whenever they want to do comedy in Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, almost always is like the funniest shit. It's so good.
Yep.
Yeah. And my closing thoughts are I think Better Call Saul is the complete package. It hits every note. It's logically consistent. The characters are rich and vibrant and interesting. All the actors are amazing in their roles. It's a lovely show to look at. Like the camera work and the direction is all beautiful, and the music. And then you've got the plotting and how it all interweaves with the world. Like you said, Dan, the balance of lawyers and drugs. And the fact that we get 6 seasons and they fully flesh out everything and they really give everything the time it needs to tell a full and complete story that not only stands as a show on its own, but also provides more to the Breaking Bad story and actually actively makes it better. I don't think you could have asked for more out of this. I think Vince Gilligan and everyone involved has just created like an insane run of TV out of this.
Absolutely, believe the hype. It's real.
And the fact that none of this is like adapted from source material, like it's not books or anything. This is all just TV that's created on the spot, year by year. That's the hard thing. That's the part I don't like. That is the show that he is a generational talent. The fact that he's able to write this year after year with such precision, such consistency, that all these characters, like, they don't ever feel like, oh, that's weird, I wouldn't expect that person to do that. Like, everyone is a living, breathing person, like you've met them. And it's just, I couldn't ask for more out of this show. It just does everything right. And I feel like I've learned a lot watching both of these shows about many things.
Likewise. Ditto. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while for you, Anthony.
Hope you enjoyed.
I think Anthony, the last time you appeared on this channel was when we were doing Star Wars, which was like nearly 5 years ago. Yeah.
Why can't I hear anyone?
Have I fixed it? Have I fixed it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anthony, did you hear what I said?
You said, have
No.
I fixed it?
Oh, I was just saying the last time you appeared on this channel, I believe, was when we did Star Wars, which was nearly 5 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Did you review all the Star Wars films?
Yeah, the ones that had come out, yeah. Yeah, actually, no, all of them, because none of them have come out since.
Yeah.
Shows have come out, but that doesn't count.
Doesn't.
Was it a separate video for each one?
Yeah, it was. And we did them live.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah, there's 11 of them.
That probably turned into like 20 hours of content, right?
Probably. They were pretty long. They're really, like, most of those films are really dense.
To the viewers, go give those a watch. They're pretty good.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining. Watching this show was an absolute pleasure. Nice thumbs up there.
How the hell did that just happen?
Did you click? I was gonna say.
No, I think the AI just saw you doing that.
AI. Wow.
Wait, what if I do this? Does this work? Oh no, I'm not on Discord. I'm on OBS. Anyway,
That's nuts. Well,
hope you all enjoyed. And in 37 minutes, day 6 will be out.
oh, congrats to those.
Oh yeah, it's already December.
Following.
Yeah, we're doing this live, Daniel.
I just realized it's December.
We're 5 days in.
Yeah.
A weekend, and Dan's like, oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, I bid you adieu, a good night, and a goodbye. A bang.
What did you call me?